S.R. Crockett, Golf and St Andrews. Crockett's journey into the world of golf began in 1894. In a letter dated July the 12th that year to his friend Dan Mowat, which marks the beginning of his relationship with golf, a sport he only played at St Andrews, he wrote, "Some day I think you must teach me to play golf. I stay at St Andrews with Lang pretty often, and he abuses me for a heathen man and a publican for not playing. I tell him I don't believe he can play much, only enough to impose on a novice." Crockett was a friend of Andrew Lang, who himself had just published a biography of St Andrews in 1893, and lived in the town. By 1895, Crockett's casual interest in golf had evolved into a serious pursuit. That summer he spent significant time in St Andrews, the town renowned as the home of golf. In a letter dated July the 4th, he notes that his wife Ruth and the children are off to St Andrews. While they took their holidays, doubtless enjoying the beaches, he continued his work, but he also immersed himself in the game. From his correspondence, we know he was there from at least the 13th to the 31st of July. In letters written in November and December, he told correspondents he had been playing golf for nearly 3 months. While he recites the course to Ayrshire and the home of the Kennedys, Cassillis, and writes of it humorously, referring to the green, where some brisk birkies are licking at the ball, one of them being laich-nosed Jamie Crawford that had his nose flattened with the stroke of a golf ball on the hills of Ayr. I suspect the multiple mentions of the sport and the seamless integration into a narrative which has no real need for this small detail says more about the fact that Crockett was pulling images from his current location and recycling them into his historic narrative. It's a pattern I've recognised often in his work. For me, Crockett is akin to an impressionist artist in the way he tends to utilise the local colour and flavour of his present experiences in the construction of his stories. The Grey Man and golf perhaps offers some vindication of my theory. We know that Crockett was also in St Andrews towards the end of October of 1895, as there's mention in the archives of him presenting a copy of The Men of the Moss Hags to Willie Ochterlony. Crockett's developing golfing prowess in St Andrews was significantly influenced by his friendship with Willie Ochterlony, who was a celebrated golfer and club maker and opened his shop in St Andrews in 1895. Indeed, Ochterlony crafted a set of left-handed clubs specifically for Crockett, which he kept for him in the shop. Sadly, the shop has changed ownership over the years, and the clubs are nowhere to be found. Instead of being either in the St Andrews Golf Museum or the Golfing Hall of Fame Museum in America, I suspect they became, and may still be, hanging on the walls as decorations in a golfing pub somewhere. By 1896, Crockett's celebrity saw him given membership to the Royal and Ancient Golf Club at St Andrews. This was at a time when caddies such as Ochterlony and Tom Morris were viewed as socially inferior. Thus, when asked by a member why he played with caddies rather than members, Crockett's response, "Find me as fine a gentleman as Ochterlony and I shall be glad to play with him," offers us an insight into his views on social hierarchy, which underpins his stories and novels. He was always a champion of the underdog. In the summer of 1896, Crockett and his family once again stayed at St Andrews, at Seaton House, now part of the Scores Hotel. Despite being on holiday, Crockett maintained a rigorous work schedule, rising early to write before heading off to the golf course. His wife Ruth noted how he blended work and leisure in a letter. "He gets up at 4 in the morning and works just as hard as if we were at home, so although it's a change of scene, it's no holiday as far as work is concerned." It has to be noted that this period was particularly productive for Crockett. He was working on multiple projects, including the Black Douglas, while finding time to enjoy his newfound love for golf. And in between golfing, there was time to take several research trips to Stirling for some scenes in the novel. The Grey Man was also being finally prepared for publication at this time. Crockett writes that 45,000 copies were being printed before publication. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall of the conversations between Lang and Crockett during the writing process of both books. During the summer of 1896, Crockett's novel Clegg Kelly was running in the Cornhill magazine prior to an autumn publication. He originally stayed behind when the family went up to St Andrews, hoping to finish Clegg, but I suspect he was writing finishing chapters and or correcting proofs while at St Andrews. In terms of golf, Willie's son Laurie Ochterlony adds to Ruth's perspective of Crockett's time at St Andrews. He recalled that Crockett and his father used to play 2 rounds of 18 holes every day, the first at 8 o'clock in the morning, the second in the afternoon. We can be fairly certain then that Crockett was at the very least writing between 4 and 7:30 a.m. each day. And we know that Crockett was in St Andrews as late as October, from correspondence. His competitive spirit and Scots humour are to the fore in a letter he writes from Seaton House on the 2nd of October 1896 to Dan Mowat, where he states, "I've beat Tom Morris, 2 up. Afternoon, Tom beat me, 4 up. The barometer falls." Anyone with a basic knowledge of golf will know that Tom Morris was a giant of the game, but I should also observe that Tom Morris was in his 70s by this time. Crockett adds, "My ambitions are to do the high hole in 4 and make Willie Ochterlony give me 6 strokes." In 1897, the Crocketts once again spent part of the summer in St Andrews. 1897 was a significant year for golf in St Andrews. It was the year of Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, and in her honour, John Angus designed the Jubilee course, which was opened as a 12-hole course on the 22nd of June, while Crockett was staying there. Correspondence shows Crockett stayed at St Andrews between at least June the 8th and July the 16th, and he invited his Glen Head friends, the Macmillans, up for a visit during that time. In that year also, his novel Lad's Love was being serialised in the Ladies' Realm, and he was finishing Lochinvar, the sequel to Men of the Moss Hags. He was still at the height of his international fame and had attracted the attentions of the notable impresario Major Pond, whom he spent some time with at St Andrews. Pond managed tours for prominent figures like Mark Twain and Winston Churchill. In writing to Crockett, Pond told him how much he had enjoyed the scenic beauty and the golf courses in St Andrews, and Crockett replied on June the 23rd, "We were pleased indeed to think that St Andrews gave you some pleasure. It is, as you say, a charming old city, and we were delighted to show it to you." Major Pond was also potentially instrumental in introducing Crockett to a new passion, photography. In a letter Crockett writes to Major Pond from Seaton House on June the 30th, he says, "I'm still going round the links twice a day, and wish you were very much here to Kodak us, as you did upon your all too short visit." There are letters between the two back and forth through the autumn talking of exchanging photographs. There are several photographs of Crockett playing golf at St Andrews, which most likely date from 1897 and could have been taken by Major Pond. There's also a promotional photograph from that time showing Crockett with Willie Ochterlony. By December, Crockett had clearly caught the photography bug, writing to Major Pond, "I have taken up photography of late, having perhaps caught the infection from your box Kodak, which did such execution on the links of St Andrews." Indeed, photography's gain may have been golf's loss, as Crockett took ownership of a half-plate camera from Newman and Guardia, which went with him on over 2,500 miles of adventure. Most notably, it provided photographs for his non-fiction work The Adventurer in Spain, which was published in 1903, but features pictures taken from his trips there from 1898 and subsequently. In 1898, Crockett was at St Andrews at least between June the 18th and July the 8th, but he may well have stayed into August. That year he writes to Major Pond from Seaton House on June the 24th about the reception of his European novel The Red Axe, stating, "I'm much obliged for your kind offer, which is both magnanimous and pecuniarily admirable, but I must defer to a more distant date. I am again at St Andrews, and playing better than last year. My chief desire at present is to do the high hole in 4. Pardon the meanness of my ambitions." The high hole, which Crockett refers to again, is the 7th hole on the old course at St Andrews. Clearly, however his golf was progressing, he still hadn't achieved that goal, and he possibly never did. But he was part of a significant golfing achievement by proxy. In August 1898, an article in the Manchester Guardian writes of him being involved in a 3-balls game with Willie Ochterlony and Mr. J.J. Wilson, when Ochterlony, the ex-Open champion, carded a round of 71, beating the course record. The paper suggests Mr. Crockett has a great opportunity to clothe it with the flesh of picturesque descriptions, and the sporting public is a very large one. In fact, Crockett was not to write about golf in a novel again until more than a decade later. In the novel Sandy's Love, published 1913, he creates a wonderful female character called Macummy, who takes on and beats the men. While the golfing connections are Leith Links and Portrush, Northern Ireland, one cannot help but think that St Andrews was on his mind. For Crockett, like so many golfers before and after, St Andrews remains the home of golf. There's no archival evidence of Crockett's golfing at St Andrews beyond 1898. He also never took up Major Pond's offer of a literary tour of America. Instead, he was spending increasing amounts of time abroad, with and without his camera, and his clubs remained at Ochterlony's. However, since both his daughters, Maisie and Margaret, attended St Leonard's School in St Andrews, it's likely that his connection to the town continued for several more years at least. Crockett's connection with St Andrews and golf is just one of the many little-known stories which I've discovered over the years I've been researching into his life. But as a graduate of St Andrews myself, though not a golfer, it's one I felt worthy of sharing.